Please police dispatcher, Southern do you need police, fire, or EMS? Cleveland police, they need police, fire, or EMS. What's that?
On the morning of June 16th, 2023, a 911 dispatcher in Cleveland, Ohio, received a panicked call from a woman asking them to send someone quick. Something was wrong with her baby. First responders would later describe what they encountered inside the home as something straight out of a nightmare. The woman who had placed the call for help, 32-year-old Crystal Candelario, told members of the police and fire department's rescue squad that she had awakened to find that her 16-month-old daughter, Jaylyn, had stopped breathing.
But right now, in this morning when I wake up, she was asleep. She sleeps every day 12 hours.
Okay.
She sleeps like at 9, 8 p.m. through 9 or 10 a.m.
Okay.
12 hours. So, in this morning I was sleeping too. I never wake up. She was...
What happened? What was going on last night?
Last night she was crying a lot. And I see one moment when I was take a shower, and she was screaming like, I don't know, probably she getting pain.
Okay.
An examination of the toddler, who was beyond resuscitation, immediately cast doubt on her story. It was clear to paramedics that the child had been dead for longer than a few hours. In their estimation, she had passed away 24 to 48 hours prior. To their horror, when they opened her mouth, they saw that it was filled with human excrement. A look around the home had given police and paramedics a grim insight into Jaylyn's last days on Earth. Though the baby was dressed in a clean outfit, it appeared that she hadn't been bathed in days. The 2-foot by 3-foot playpen, where she had obviously been confined for a lengthy period of time, was soaked in urine and feces. As Jaylyn's body was taken to the morgue, the homicide unit was brought in to deal with her mother. After being informed that her account didn't add up, Crystal broke down and told them that she had been away on vacation since June 6th. Rather than finding a sitter for her daughter or bringing her along, she had put her in the pack and play, along with a few bottles of milk, and left her to fend for herself till she got back.
Why not travel with you?
¿Por qué no llevaste a Jaylyn contigo? Porque yo pensaba regresar el viernes y ya quedarme con ella. O sea, era algo rápido, eventual, que no...
She said that because she had planned on returning on Friday and spending time with them, so
Porque no me iba a quedar en la casa de nadie.
she wasn't going to stay in anybody's house.
But why not take with you if you already knew that she had a condition going on at the time?
Si tú sabías que ella tenía una condición y estaba enfermita,
She needed
¿por qué no llevarla contigo?
Porque por eso mismo, por yo pasear, por
She wanted to have a good time and travel.
Showing a shocking lack of common sense, not to mention maternal instincts, Crystal claimed that she thought Jaylyn would be all right. She had left her alone before, albeit for only a couple of days, and she had survived. In her mind, a baby who was barely a year old would be fine for a week or so without food, water, clean diapers, or attention of any kind. Crystal explained that she had gone to Puerto Rico for a few days with a male friend. She had stopped over in Detroit for a while before returning home. In the 10 days she was gone, she had never once asked anyone to check in on her daughter. She had, however, posted pictures of herself on social media, strolling on the beach and smiling from ear to ear. Crystal was arrested and charged with aggravated murder and child endangerment. Instead of taking full responsibility for her wrongdoing, she had blamed her actions on mental issues, citing depression and anxiety as the root causes of her poor judgment. The medical examiner noted that Jaylin was extremely emaciated at the time of autopsy. Her eyes had receded into their sockets, and her lips were cracked from a lack of fluids. Excrement was found under her tiny fingernails and inside her mouth, indicating that she had eaten her own waste in a vain attempt to fill her empty belly. Though it was clear that she had been starved, her cause of death was determined to be dehydration. When neighbors were interviewed, a few said that they had heard Jaylin crying, sometimes all through the night, but hadn't intervened. Since Crystal hadn't told them she was going away, they had assumed that she was home. One neighbor recalled that she had agreed to watch Jaylin for a weekend a few months earlier. When Crystal didn't pick her up as scheduled, the woman had reached out to her, but her calls and texts had gone unanswered. 6 weeks later, an unapologetic Crystal finally showed up to collect her baby, who by then was calling the neighbor Mama.
It wasn't really her mom that was taking care of her, it was her grandma that was mostly taking care of her. Her mom always wanted to go out and just left her with her grandma and all that.
The Ring cam of a nearby home had picked up the sound of Jaylin's haunting screams during the time that her mother was sunbathing in Puerto Rico with a man who is assumed to be her boyfriend. The fact that her cries were loud enough to be heard down the block, and yet no one came to check on her, is just another unfathomable aspect of this tragic case. Forgoing the formalities of a trial, Crystal pleaded guilty as charged on February 22, 2024. At sentencing, her parents, who had been in Ecuador at the time with her other daughter, 7-year-old Amaya, begged for leniency. They maintained that Crystal was ill-equipped to care for a child alone, which was why they lent a hand whenever possible. Since they had been out of the country at the time, they had been unaware that she had left Jaylin unattended. They had also echoed their daughter's assertion that her crippling anxiety had clouded her judgment. Having gone off her meds, which she was prone to do, she hadn't given any thought to how her baby would survive without nourishment for 10 days. Photos of Crystal enjoying her days of fun in the sun were displayed in front of the packed courtroom. It was lost on no one that as she dined out at fancy restaurants and drank the finest wines, her baby daughter was trapped in an empty house, eating her own excrement. When the lead detective in the case, T.J. Powell, took the stand, he asked to read a poem he had written for Jaylin. His voice breaking with emotion, he had spoken of the impact her death had on the strangers who cared for her, more in death than the individual who should have loved her above all others had in life.
I was the lead detective investigator on this case, and I can honestly say, Your Honor, in my 17-year career as a Cleveland police officer, this by far is the most horrific case I've ever had to investigate, Now, I've been a detective for 10 years.
Forensic pathologist Elizabeth Mooney had teared up as she recounted not only the physical pain Jaylin went through, but also the agonizing separation anxiety the toddler would have experienced as she waited hour after hour, day in and day out, for the mother who had apparently forgotten she existed.
Your Honor, thank you for allowing me to be the voice for Jaylin Candelario, a beautiful angel whose life was cut short for no good reason.
When it was Crystal's turn to speak, she had once again reminded everyone present of her struggles with mental illness. She had ended by saying that God and my daughter have forgiven me.
Dios y mi hija me han perdonado God and my daughter have forgiven me.
After taking everyone's statements into consideration, Judge Brendan Sheehan sentenced Crystal to life in prison with no chance of parole. Addressing her directly, he had spoken aloud what everyone in the courtroom was thinking.
Just as you didn't let Jalen out of her confinement until she died, so too, you should spend the rest of your life in a cell without freedom. The only difference will be that prison will at least feed you and give you liquids that you denied her.
For those wondering why Jalen's father didn't step in at some point, since there's no mention of him anywhere, it's presumed that he was not a part of his daughter's life, while there's some satisfaction in the knowledge that Crystal will never again walk among us a free woman. It doesn't bring Jalen back, nor does it make what happened to her any less appalling. Sadly, this isn't the first time a parent has put their own selfish needs above those of their children, and it won't be the last.